Going to go through how to do some double exposure. I have two examples up here, both of these using an image of my son and some just different variations on this technique. So what you need is some image that you want to use as kind of the outline. So this could be a human being, a person, or an animal would work. Another option would be, or the other thing you would need is a background image to kind of fill into that outline of the person or the animal. So I'm going to go ahead and show how to do a human being for this one. I have already found my images, so I went and saved these to my desktop. Here is my image of my son, and I'm going to use this image of just a city. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my son's image into Photoshop. This way it's already scaled up and it looks good. And for this one, I'm going to do the cityscape. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to select the person or the animal. There's a couple different ways you can do this. I recommend object selection or quick selection. If I'm using object selection, all I'm doing is dragging over something and seeing if this will pick up kind of a good outline of what I'm looking for. This looks pretty good. Some areas that maybe are not as good might be the hair. So if I wanted to add some stuff, or if I just wanted to, I had to use the quick selection in general, what I'm going to do is my quick selection tool is allowing me to select areas. I'm going to use the brackets to the right of the letter P to make my brush bigger or smaller, my selection. So my quick selection, I'm going to go and start pushing through the image of my son's face and torso here. And so my brush is fairly large. I may have some issues here because of the background being a similar color to the shirt. You can see there. I over-selected. So if I over-select like this, I'm going to hold down Option, and then I'm going to push this out. Another way to change whether you're selecting or deselecting is go to the top. Right here is your options. Deselect and select for your quick selection. The hotkey for that is W. That's looking pretty good. Again, for my image, the quick selection worked really well. So I'm kind of just doing this for demo's sake. But everybody's going to need to use some combination potentially of tools. So it might be quick selection. You might need to use your magic wand tool, which selects colors. I'm going to go in here with my quick selection, and I'm just going to shrink my brush down with that left bracket, and I'm going to push this out into the hair a little bit too. So, all right, and I'm not going to worry about every single strand of hair, but maybe a couple larger ones would look kind of cool. So, all right, and that looks pretty good. So I'm ready to go. Next thing I'm going to do here is make a mask so that I take away my background, and so I'm going to click and mask at the bottom of my layers. It's that circle inside the rectangle. I'm going to go now, and I'm actually going to duplicate this whole layer set, and I'm just going to turn it off so I have it in case something gets messed up. So I'm going to duplicate my layer, and I'm going to go down and just turn off my eyeball. So from here, I'm ready to go and start bringing in my other image. So I'm going to go and I'm going to bring in my cityscape. So it's going to come in. It's fairly small. I want to drag that out. What I'm looking to do is kind of have this, just planning where this is going to be on the image. Okay, now for this one, I kind of picked this particularly because it had a split in the city. I like this open gap in the middle. And so what I'm going to do here is just kind of turn down my opacity on that layer so I can see where I'm lining this up with my son's image. And so I could just shrink this up maybe slightly to kind of get a better line up here. And I'm actually going to end up cropping my image a little bit too. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to bump my opacity back up. And so we need to make a selection that is that shape of my son's outline again. I'm going to go back to my mask. I'm going to right click on the mask, which is that black and white icon on the layer with my son's image. And I'm going to go to add mask to selection. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to create a mask on this layer of the city. So it's going to be essentially filling the same thing. Now, the one thing you're going to notice here is that there's some cropping because I didn't have my city fill in there. So I'm going to go to my crop tool here, and I'm just going to move this in so that we don't keep that little corner. I think that's okay, and I'm going to double click to just change that. From here, I want to start kind of masking out or adding or taking away some things that I want to see from my son's image. I'm also going to add a background. So for the background, I'm going to actually select a color from the sky here. I'm going to go up to my color eyedropper tool. The hotkey for that is I, and this selects color. So if I click out here and I kind of drag around, you can see it's selecting different colors that are in there. I'm going to pick something that's a little bit lighter. So not maybe pure white, but pretty close to it. And I'm going to go and create a new layer at the bottom, which is that square with the plus, and I'm going to drag that down to the bottom of my layers. I'm going to go over to my paint bucket now, which is G, and that'll take you to your gradient tool, so you want to make sure you switch to your paint bucket. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop that color I selected with the color eyedropper into the background. From here, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to go up to the layer of the city, and I'm also going to just make sure I have the selection of my sun's outline again. So I'm going to go right click, add mask to selection, and now I'm going to go with a black paintbrush into this mask. Remember, black will take away, it's turning off the light so we don't see some image. White, if I toggle it over here by clicking there, then it will switch. So I'm going to go ahead and the white will add. So I'm going in and I'm using a very soft brush. So if I go up to my brushes, I want to go into my general brushes, and I want something that's like a soft round like this. Okay, you can see the hardness is down, the size is up a little bit. So I'm going to stick with this. Whereas my hard round, this hardness is up, my size is there. I'm going to go out. The size really doesn't matter, but now I'm going to go and I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. And what I'm going to start doing is kind of airbrushing away using that black paint on that mask, so that I can see parts of my son's face and image popping through there. So I might take a little bit from both sides and include it. I may, if I don't like it, if I take too much, I can go back and I can repaint over and keep those clouds maybe up the middle side there. Okay. Now I'm going to jump back. Let's see. And I'm actually going to turn the color, change the color on my son's image. So I'm going to go to that image layer, and I'm going to go down to my adjustment layers. I'm going to make a black and white adjustment layer. This layer is going to affect anything below it. So what I want to do is go up to my adjustment, my properties here, and I'm just going to hit this to attach it only to that one image. So now the image of my son is a little bit, or it's the color's turned off. I'm going to go back. I'm going to create another one. This one's going to be a brightness and contrast, and I can kind of toy with the contrast, maybe push the separation between the lights and darks a little bit higher. I can mess with brightness on there too. I think that actually looks pretty good where it was. So, and it's looking pretty good. Now, one thing I could do here is start kind of thinking about what I want to keep, what I want to leave or get rid of. If I kind of like the way that my son's face is looking, I could leave it, or I could go back and maybe I'm going to go ahead and paint away. So I'm going to turn off some of this maybe in the middle. I don't like maybe some of the mouth showing up here. So I'm going to go ahead and add, because I'm adding to the city. So this is the white brush to kind of take out that face that was appearing in there. All right. I also don't like this hard edge up here right now. So what I'm going to do is kind of take that away. And so I'm going to switch this to my black brush on that layer and just kind of really softly, I'm really working the edge of this. Take away that edge there. But you can see that now it's exposing the image of my son. So I need to go back to that mask layer. And you can see right here, I'm clicked on the layer of my son, but I want to be on the mask. And I'm going to kind of airbrush that away too. So I don't want to be able to see that at all. So one other thing is my opacity on my brush is lowered. So I'm at like 60%. If you're at 100%, you may want to go up there and just slide that down a little bit. And that way it's a little bit more gradual. So this way I'm kind of fading my son's head in here into the background. And same thing with the cloud shapes as well. So. And I think that looks pretty good. One of the other versions that I did, which was this one, I ended up taking an image and duplicating it and flipping it. Another thing I did here was I put a gradient map adjustment layer on there. So I could do this on this one as well. If I go down, I want to put this at the top. I'm going to go down. I'm going to go to gradient map. And gradient map assigns colors. So you can see here it's really weird right now. So I assign my light color, my dark color. Here, this side is actually my light color. So I would say, all right, maybe I want like kind of like a darker teal for my darks. And actually that kind of off pink color looks pretty good. So I kind of like how that looks. But maybe I'll change it, make it a little bit brighter. And that looks pretty good there. Hit OK, hit OK. And I can also go ahead and maybe play around with maybe contrast, or I could even turn this down a little bit so that I have some of the realistic color in there. So I can turn off the opacity on that adjustment layer. So I have a pretty good example here. And again, this will work for really any kind of image any kind of background, but you want to kind of isolate. All right, am I using the human being, the person's face, the body as the main, and then what am I going to fill it with, or an animal outline, and then what am I filling it with? Another last thing that I like to kind of play around with here too is I'm going to duplicate this background image. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and duplicate. And I'm going to remove the mask on this one after dropping it below everything. I'm going to put this all the way at the bottom, just above my background color. I'm going to take the mask off. And this is kind of like a little trick that I like to use where I will use that background. I'm just going to blow it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly lined up. It's kind of just like a little illusion. And what I'll do is either I will kind of turn this down potentially so I can kind of see the city a little bit in the background. Another thing I like to do here is maybe create an adjustment layer on there, or not adjustment layer, layer mask, and paint that away as well, so that only some parts maybe remain, and I'm kind of taking and just making this a little bit more subtle. Okay. And so I think that looks pretty good. I'm very happy with how it looks, and I would then go ahead and file, save this as a JPEG.